Welcome to Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. We haven't had a garden question and answer for quite a while, so let's go ahead and do that today. Question and answer episode 25. Well, a lot of you folks have asked me this question. Give me an update on your Mexican sunflower. And this is our first question. How's it doing and what are your plans? I planted this in a video called Free Fertilizer. This is Tithonia diversifolia. It is the more scarce version of Mexican sunflower. Normally, if you buy Mexican sunflower, you're going to get Tithonia rotundifolia. That's not the one you want. You want the diversifolia. This is a great nutrient collector, and it makes a superb green mulch or green manure. You can till this stuff directly in your soil. You can practice chop and drop, lay it around your fruit trees or in your garden, put it in your compost. It's really, really nutrient dense and makes a great fertilizer just all on its own. But here's the deal. Here's what I'm going to do with this. The reason this is such a good fertilizer is that it is a good collector of minerals and nutrients from the soil. If I have it in a pot, it's not sending its roots into my native soil and drawing up all that minerals and all that nutrition that's in the native soil. It's only relying on what I put in the pot, and that's not an efficient way to do chop and drop. It's going to exhaust that pot real quick, and well, there was a plan though. Originally, I started this plant from a cutting, and I showed you how to grow that cutting in water and in moist soil. The cutting succeeded, and I put it in this pot until I could get more of these stalks grown. Now what I can do is I can chop these, and I can root these cuttings in the soil somewhere in my yard, somewhere on the side of my house where they'll be kind of out of the way. And then they'll be able to send their roots out, send those roots deep, and start mining my native soil and my clay and bringing up all that nutrition that then I can put in the garden. So that's what I'm doing with these plants. It is a free fertilizer, but right now I'm in that intermediate stage of growing me some new cuttings. That's what I'm doing. So I strongly recommend that if you'd like to have a source of free fertilizer, look into this, Tithonia diversifolia, the Mexican sunflower. It's great chop and drop, easy to grow, easy to start from cuttings. All right, our second question comes from Melissa Kingery, who is a frequent commenter. She says, Scott, if I'm renting and I want to keep things in a pot, what trees or berries do well in pots? That's a good question. The reality is almost everything can be grown in pots with some exceptions. Citrus does great in pots. Peaches, plums, stone fruit, you can grow those in a pot. Basically, any fruit tree that does not rely on a deep tap root can be grown in a pot. Same thing with berries. Most berries can be grown in pots. Some berries, like blackberries, like to spread out, but you can grow them in pots. The only thing you have to do is remember a pot is a limited sample of soil. So the plant that's in that pot relies on you to put the nutrition in that soil that your tree needs, and to do so regularly, and to keep it watered. Your plants are going to exhaust the nutrition in that soil pretty quickly, and you'll want to fertilize regularly. I've grown strawberries, fig trees, peach trees, citrus. I've got a Barbados cherry tree in a pot. You can grow all of these in a pot. I've grown goji berries in a pot. There are all kinds of things you can grow in a pot. There are a few exceptions. Apple trees don't do well in containers. Maybe you've had success with it, but generally the apple tree needs to send its roots out far and wide to forage in order to produce fruit. It will grow in the pot. It just won't produce fruit as reliably as if you put it in the ground. There are other trees that don't grow well in pots. I've got two pawpaw trees temporarily in a pot, but they won't do well in a pot either. They require native soil because they're going to send a root down deep. They have a tap root. So pretty much anything can be grown in containers with just a few exceptions. And it's always worth giving it a try if it's one of those questionable plants. So I wouldn't shy away from growing virtually anything in a pot. I've grown sweet potatoes, I've grown onions, all the vegetables I've grown in pots. So I'd certainly give citrus a try because it thrives in a pot. We've got fruit coming on here, and we've got hundreds and hundreds of blossoms. Yeah, I mean, you can't beat it. Another thing about growing in pots with trees is you want to keep them pruned to be small. You want the canopy of your tree to be about, if you imagine this as a volume, if you imagine the canopy as a solid mass, it should be about the same size as the pot that it's in. Citrus trees can go a little bit larger than that, but as a general rule, you want to keep them trimmed back and keep them small. That way, if you get a freeze, you can cart your citrus in the garage or take it inside, and you can keep them alive. This guy has survived 2 freezes, and although it's not a real pretty form of a tree, it's curved over on itself, it's a good producer and it's a healthy plant. Our third question comes from Denise Moledos. I hope I pronounced your name right, Denise. She asks, should I keep my Satsuma tree? She's talking about a citrus tree that has been in the ground and is damaged by the frost and the freeze that we had. She said there's growth only on the trunk above the graft, but her new Meyer Lemon tree has growth below the graft, so she's not going to keep it. Let me show you what that looks like. This is my improved Meyer Lemon tree, affectionately known as Lucy. And Lucy has been swatted down twice. This is her second time to be frozen back all the way to the trunk. You can see all this deadness up in here, certainly dead. And we're going to be doing a video on how to take this tree back and recapture it. Oh, look at that. We've got ladybugs. But here you can see there's new growth growing out from down here. Right there, where those big branches were cut off, that was its first freeze. And we took the tree all the way down to there, and these 3 big main branches came back. But you can see above the graft union, which is way down there, we have new growth, and a lot of it. So Lucy's going to pop back just fine, and we'll have Meyer Lemons. So should you keep a tree like this? Yes, I would say if you've got stuff coming from above the graft, you have an advantage. Rather than get a new tree and plant it, what's going to happen is this tree is an established tree. It has a huge root system, and that root system is already developed. A new tree, you're going to have to plant that new tree, and it's going to have to work on its roots for those first couple of years before it really starts working on giving you fruit. But this has the advantage of already having an established root system, and because it has that gigantic root system down there, this new growth that's coming up will be this big in a year or 2. This is 1.5 years of growth to get to about 8 feet tall because it had an established root system. So if you've got stuff coming up from above your graft union, you're safe. You're going to have your Meyer Lemons, you're going to have your citrus, you're going to have whatever that variety is. Let's say you have stuff coming up from the rootstock below the graft union, but nothing is growing above the graft. You're not at a loss there either. What you can do is still take advantage of that rootstock. You have a mature, well-developed rootstock down there. All you need to do is cut it all back, and you can graft scion wood from the varieties that you do want onto that stock. And you could even go to the store and buy a brand new little tiny tree, the smallest one you can get, and just buy it for the scion wood, right? Because that little tree that you buy, if you put it in the ground, is going to take longer to give you fruit than if you took scion wood from that tree and grafted it onto your established rootstock. That's the way to go. So I wouldn't get rid of it no matter what. If the rootstock is viable, you have options. Our next question comes from Valerie Gabriel. She says, gorgeous cauliflowers, how were you able to keep the heads so white, as it didn't look like they were covered with the surrounding leaves? That's true. Valerie, this variety is called Durgesh number 41. And I chose this variety because it's a self-blanching cauliflower and you don't have to come and tie up the leaves. Let me show you what it looks like. Here we have a head forming. It's kind of dirty down in there, but that's a young head. And it is kind of covered by these leaves. However, the other ones that were in here were like this one. And you can see how this naturally wants to cover up the head and blanch it and keep it from turning colors and getting sun scalded and burnt and all that. But the ones that I've already harvested, the ones in my cauliflower cooking video, they were open just like that, open to the sun. But this variety still self-blanches and stays that nice creamy yellow-white color. So what I like to do is save myself some work when I select a seed to grow, I look in the seed catalogs, I look online, and I find varieties that have features that are going to save me some work. And specifically this one I chose because I wasn't going to have to come out here and tie these leaves up and blanch that cauliflower to keep it from turning weird colors. And yeah, no, I specifically chose this cauliflower because it saves me work. And that's a smart thing to do with any kind of vegetable. You know, sometimes vegetables require an extra step, like hilling up of potatoes or blanching of celery, blanching of cauliflower. Sometimes you can save yourself some work by looking for varieties that have been developed to avoid that extra step. And that's what we did here. Our next question comes from Lettuce Carrots. Lettuce Carrots is growing tomatoes and is in a similar climate as me and is asking about organic fertilizer. Lettuce Carrots says that ordering fertilizer online is too expensive for me because of the high shipping cost. Is there anything that I can suggest locally at the store? I can go to Home Depot and other local stores. Are all organic fertilizers pretty much the same? Okay, so let's talk about these organic fertilizers. Well, tomatoes like this, I have suggested in my videos that you fertigate or fertilize with a liquid organic fertilizer once on a regular basis. I do it once every 3 weeks, sometimes once every 2 weeks, depending on the season. This little guy right here, I like to use a fish fertilizer when they're young like this, high in nitrogen. And you can go to Home Depot or most garden stores and buy a fish fertilizer. It's called Alaska Fish Fertilizer, and it's a 5-1-1, or they have another ratio depending on whatever. It doesn't matter. That fish fertilizer is great for all your plants, especially tomatoes, early on. When they start bearing fruit, you want something with higher numbers, the second and third numbers, that phosphorus and potassium, because that helps set fruit and helps with the general overall health of the plant. It doesn't necessarily need all that nitrogen to put on foliage. So there are all kinds of organic fertilizers at the big box stores, and yeah, most of them are kind of the same. They have the macronutrients, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. What you want to look for, though, is a organic fertilizer that has all the micronutrients as well. Calcium, sulfur, those are actually macronutrients. And you want to look for diversity of micronutrients. So it really doesn't matter with regard to the macronutrients. In most organic fertilizers, they are generally kind of the same. You're looking for those micronutrients with minerals and things like that. So what really helps this soil health, and if you've got healthy soil, you have healthy plants. What helps that soil is a large diversity of micro and macronutrients. Minerals, bacteria, and fungi. Now, if you want to use a dry fertilizer, some dry fertilizers like Dr. Earth's is available at Home Depot. And I like that fertilizer because it has everything your plant needs, but it also has bacterial inoculants and fungal inoculants that help build the biology in your soil, in your container. I like to use that as well. I've also found another dry organic fertilizer that's much like Dr. Earth's from IV Organics. And IV Organics has a very well-balanced fertilizer, but you have to order that online. So that kind of excludes that from your situation here. But for everyone else, if you want to get 10% off of your IV Organics fertilizer and any of their products, use my code GUMBO10. I am an affiliate of IV Organics now, and it's also an excellent fertilizer to use as a top dressing or to mix into your soil. When we planted these, I showed you how to use that and work it into the soil. It's a slow release fertilizer, perfectly fine. Basically, you just want to make sure that you go and get any kind of organic fertilizer that is kind of a general purpose plant fertilizer, and you can use that directly on your tomatoes, on all your vegetables. So any general organic fertilizer will do. Oh man, David the Good's live streaming and I'm out here shooting a video. Our next question comes from Cheryl K. Cheryl asks, well, she says she bought several packs of Dwarf Tomato Project seeds. They're supposed to be medium to large size heirloom tomatoes, but on compact plants. And she asks, have I ever tried any of those tiny plants, or have you tried micro dwarf cherry tomato seeds? she got those for some regular sized flower pots to grow in windows and on porches and patios. Yes, Cheryl, I've grown both micro dwarfs and dwarf tomatoes, and I did so successfully. I got my micro dwarf tomato seeds from Gary Ibsen's Tomato Fest website. This was 3 years ago, maybe 4, but I did grow them. This is about the smallest size pot that I would grow a micro tomato in, because though they're dwarfs and though they're small, they do top out about like that, so you can grow them here. But I wouldn't grow them any smaller. I wouldn't grow them in something like that. You might try it, you might get away with it, but I think I'd go with something a little bit bigger like this. I also grew the micro tomatoes in 3-gallon grow bags. They did just fine. I do suggest, if you're going to grow those, that if they're in a smaller pot, that you have to really pay attention to watering, and because those smaller pots will dry out a lot quicker than a larger pot. And yeah, have fun with them, man. You get so many so many really great varieties of tomatoes, those micro dwarfs and dwarfs. It's like you come out and pick them, the cherry ones especially, they're like candy. You get all kinds of range of colors. I found that mine weren't heavy producers, and some produced more than others, but what it did produce, it was really fun to grow. And I encourage you, if you got a small space to garden and you don't have a lot of resources, or you don't have, big pots and lots of potting soil, get some micro dwarf tomatoes. They're fun to grow. Speaking of tomatoes, let me show you. Somebody asked me in one of my other videos, this is like a bonus question here. Can you really sow tomato seeds directly in the soil like you showed in one of your recent videos? They're skeptical. After all, we start tomatoes under lights indoors with heat mats and with controlled environments. No, let me show you the results. When I showed you how to plant tomatoes and start tomato seeds, I also sowed seeds directly in here. And look, we have tomatoes coming up. I just put the seeds in there, threw a little bit of potting mix over them, kept them well watered, and lo and behold, we have pink brandywine coming up right there. What you can do is let these get a little bit larger, let them get a couple of sets of true leaves, and you can come with a spoon and you can lift these out of here and plant them wherever you want in your garden, or you can pot them up. I'm going to leave some to grow in here, in this container. And look here, here's our yellow pear. We started a whole seed pack in there. When these get about 4 inches tall, maybe a little taller, we can separate these out, and I'll show you how to do that. We can separate them out and plant them where we want them. So you can start seeds outdoors with tomatoes. The only thing is, I've lost my 6 to 8 week head start, but I think we'll be fine. 6 to 8 week head start when you start them indoors. My seedlings are not doing well indoors because the temperatures in our house have been rather cool lately. So I'm going to have most of my tomatoes direct sown or started like that from store-bought starts. Yeah, because my seedlings aren't doing so well. We're a real gardening channel here, folks. I tell you when stuff doesn't go right, and we're trying to be honest here and help gardeners overcome their challenges. But yeah, you can start seeds directly. The key to starting these tomato seeds is the temperatures need to be consistently warm. It's been in the high 60s to the 80s during the days. It's been dropping down into the 60s and maybe the 50s every now and then at night. And we had a nice window of warm weather, so I just decided to put those seeds in there and look at them grow. Finally, I had a couple of questions about growing radishes. We did sow some radishes here. My son and I came out to fill in the bare spots where the freeze had killed off our carrots, and we interplanted some radishes. Well, that was about 25 days ago maybe, and we've got a mass of radishes here. Do we need to thin radishes? After all, we broadcast this seed and we didn't space it out. Do we need to thin? Let me show you what they look like right now and answer that question. Here's our densely sown radish patch. And look, we've got little radishes down here coming up. That's cool. Do you need to thin them? I don't usually thin my radishes intentionally, but what happens is when you come out and find these little guys, like let's say, although these are very little, let's say I wanted to pluck one out and take it in and enjoy the radish and some radish greens, that's a tiny little radish. I think this is a French breakfast radish. I can take that out, and I've thinned. I've made space. Mostly these radishes will push one another apart, kind of like beets do, like these two guys right here. But if you see that one's doing well and the other one's not doing so well, just pluck that one out. But yeah, the radishes, they're looking good here. Phoebe, are you going to eat my radishes? Huh? Phoebe has been a constant menace in the garden because she likes brassicas. She likes to eat cabbage. But she's still a good girl and still remains employee of the month. Isn't that right? Let's see if we've got any radishes over here. This is my favorite, one of my favorite radishes, Malaga. There's one forming right down in there. I don't know if you can see it, but it's that purple thing, and they're nice. They're a nice purple radish. They have a beautiful white, icy looking flesh. Yeah, we got a little more time on those. These carrots, some of them are ready to harvest. Some of them are bulking up down in there. Yeah. Well, that's all the questions we have for today. We're really about to start sowing our spring seeds. I'm going to plant some beans this week. We're going to take out some of these crops that are currently taking up space in here, and we're going to get spring started in earnest because our average last frost date was about 5 days ago, and the weatherman finally has said that the cold snap I was waiting on, I was delaying my sowing and my planting. The weatherman finally said that's pretty much going to be a non-event for us, so it's go time for our spring garden here in Zone 9A on the Texas coast. If you'd like to learn how to garden in a small backyard context like this, follow my channel. We invite you to subscribe if you find our content useful. I mean, look, I've got 3 garden beds back here, a ton of containers. I've got micro orchards, I've got grapevines, and we're growing citrus and peaches and plums and apples and vegetables and cabbage, all kinds of good stuff, and we're overcoming our problems. This is a teaching garden. We don't make a ton of food out of here, but we do make a large variety of food. If you'd like to learn how to garden, let's get growing together. Hey, thank you for following my channel, and thank you for liking our videos. We'll talk to you next time. Happy gardening to you. Bye-bye.